If she plays piano, I quit, mocked the principal, not knowing the black girl was already a legend. The grand auditorium of the Manhattan Academy shimmered under crystal chandeliers, but the air was thick with tension. Rows of students shifted nervously in their seats, phones raised, eager to capture whatever spectacle was about to unfold. At the center of the stage stood Preston Wells, the Academy's director, known less for his musicianship than for his ruthless arrogance. His gaze swept across the room until it landed on Tasha Brooks, a 17-year-old girl from the Bronx who had dared to challenge centuries of elitist tradition. Preston's lips curled into a smile that carried no warmth. "If this girl even dares to touch that piano," he announced loud enough for the entire hall to hear, "I will resign on the spot." Laughter erupted instantly. Students elbowed each other, already preparing captions for their recordings. To them, this was entertainment, a performance destined for failure before a single note had been played. Tasha did not flinch. Her eyes stayed fixed on the polished black Steinway at the center of the stage, the very instrument meant to crush her spirit. Each step she took toward it silenced a fraction of the crowd's laughter, though mocking whispers still lingered like smoke. By the time her fingers hovered above the ivory keys, the auditorium was buzzing not with music, but with disbelief. The wager had been made. The stage was hers. The bench creaked softly as Tasha lowered herself before the Steinway. The polished surface reflected the glare of stage lights, and in that reflection, she saw more than her own face. She saw every doubt and insult that had been hurled at her since she arrived at the Academy. When the judge's clipboard moved closer, she lifted her chin. "Rachmaninov Concerto No. 2, she said with a steadiness that startled even herself. A collective gasp rolled through the room. Several students exchanged glances of disbelief. Choosing that concerto was not ambition. It was defiance. The piece was infamous for breaking professionals, a battlefield of impossible fingerings and unrelenting dynamics. Preston Wells stepped forward, his tailored suit catching the stage light. His laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Suicide," he sneered. "You cannot even begin to imagine what this composition demands. This is beyond reckless." His voice carried through the hall, laced with the certainty of a man who believed the outcome was already written. From the far side of the judge's table, Jack Callahan adjusted his glasses. His brow furrowed, but his voice remained measured. "She has chosen. Let her continue." Phones tilted upward as whispers grew louder. Near the front row, Jason Mendez leaned toward another student, muttering under his breath. "This will be over in 30 seconds. Watch her choke." His phone camera was already rolling, prepared to immortalize her collapse. Tasha did not look at him. She did not look at Preston. Instead, her fingers hovered over the opening keys, trembling not from fear, but from the storm gathering within her. The hall pulsed with tension, each second before the first note stretched into eternity. Students held their breath, waiting for the inevitable failure, waiting for the Bronx girl to prove that she did not belong. Her eyelids fell shut, blocking out the mocking faces, the chandeliers, the weight of history pressing against her shoulders. In the silence, she reached for the only voice that had never doubted her. She remembered the words of her grandmother, Rebecca Lang, spoken countless nights in their cramped Bronx apartment. "When the world refuses to listen, let your music speak." Her hands steadied. The laughter dimmed in her memory. The keys waited like an unbroken wall, and she was ready to climb. With a deep breath, Tasha prepared to unleash a sound that would decide not only her future, but the fate of every arrogant voice that had already written her off. The first note rises like a whisper in the silence, delicate but commanding. The hall, moments earlier brimming with suppressed laughter and smug whispers, is suddenly frozen. Tasha Brooks does not hesitate. Her fingers move across the piano keys with a grace and precision that belies her age, coaxing out the haunting opening chords of Rachmaninov's Concerto No. 2. For a heartbeat, there is nothing but music and breath. Jason Mendez, who had leaned back in his chair smirking, shifts forward. The phone he held at an angle to catch her failure is still recording, but his grin falters. The tones that spill from the grand piano are not shaky or uncertain. They are bold, layered, and alive, weaving themselves into the air like threads of fire and silk. Preston Wells' condescending smile stiffens. His eyes narrow, jaw tightening as the sound deepens. swelling into something larger than the room itself. He had expected fumbling. He had expected disaster. Instead, every keystroke hits with an exactness he cannot dismiss. The audience is pulled in unwillingly at first. One or two students exchange confused glances, waiting for the stumble that never comes. But as the melody builds, mockery begins to evaporate. Phones rise, not to capture humiliation, but to preserve what is unfolding before them. Tasha closes her eyes, not in retreat but in surrender to the music. She does not see the stairs, the lifted brows, or the phone screens. She only feels the echo of words etched in her memory. Rebecca Lang's voice, soft but unbreakable. When the world refuses to listen, let your music speak. The scene blurs into a memory. A cramped Bronx apartment with peeling paint and the constant hum of traffic outside the window. A much younger Tasha sits on a second-hand upright piano, its wood chipped, its keys uneven. Rebecca Lang hovers beside her, guiding small fingers onto ivory worn with age. "Do not force it, baby," Rebecca whispers. "Let the sound guide you. Play with your heart, not just your hands." The vision fades as the piano in the grand hall roars to life again. Her playing accelerates, the rhythm gaining force. The audience leans forward without realizing it, drawn into a current too powerful to resist. Another flash, sharper this time. Malik Thompson, her schoolteacher, standing at the door of the dusty music room after hours. The lights dim, but the piano in the corner gleams as though waiting for her. Malik smiles knowingly as Tasha slips inside. "You will need time others will not give you," he says. "Take it. This room is yours after the last bell." She remembers the way her heart swelled with gratitude, the way her hands shook as she realized someone believed in her. The music swells with her memory. Fingers darting, racing, striking notes that burn with urgency. The scene shifts once more. A dimly lit church basement where Daniel Ruiz, her secret mentor, waits by an upright piano. His eyes are sharp, his tone strict but kind. He demonstrates a technique, his hands gliding with impossible ease. Then he lifts his chin, demanding she try. "You will not just play notes, Tasha," Daniel says. "You will own them. Every sound must belong to you. Do it again." Night after night she had returned, tired, hungry, but determined. And Daniel never relented, never lowered the bar. In those hidden hours he forged something in her, not just skill, but defiance. Back in the hall, every ounce of that secret training explodes from her fingertips. The sound is no longer delicate. It is volcanic. The concerto surges forward, thunder rolling through the hall as her body sways with the rhythm, every motion of her arms and shoulders amplifying the storm inside her. The audience is not breathing. Their expressions change in waves, doubt melting into surprise, surprise melting into disbelief. One girl clutches the arm of her seat. Another lowers her phone, realizing the recording will never capture the electricity in the room. Jack Callahan, seated among the board members, leans back. His brow rises not in mockery but in respect. He crosses his arms, studying her intently, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. This is not arrogance. This is recognition. Jason Mendez stares, the insult on his tongue dying unspoken. He blinks at his screen, realizing the footage he had hoped to use as ridicule now shines as evidence of something extraordinary. His own reflection on the glass looks pale beside the brilliance he is trying to capture. Preston Wells' composure begins to crack. His once smug expression is now carved with disbelief. His knuckles tighten against the armrest of his chair, the confident smirk completely erased. He shifts in his seat, leaning forward despite himself, eyes darting to the keys as if searching for a flaw. None comes. Every strike of the piano grows sharper, more commanding, until it seems impossible that a 17-year-old girl is holding the entire hall in her grip. Yet she is. She owns it. And through it all, Tasha does not open her eyes. She does not need to. She sees every memory, every sacrifice, every word of encouragement shaping the music pouring from her soul. She plays for her grandmother's quiet strength, for Malik's faith, for Daniel's unyielding discipline. She plays because she was told she could not. And with every note, she proves she can. The music climbs toward the most dangerous passage, the section that even seasoned professionals approach with caution. Tasha Brooks knows this is where mistakes are made, where reputations collapse in seconds. The air grows heavier as her fingers approach the stretch, the melody surging like a wave ready to crash. Preston Wells leans forward in his seat, his eyes sharp with anticipation. This is the moment he has been waiting for, the stumble that will prove him right, the slip that will reduce her to nothing but a foolish child who dared to challenge tradition. His lips curl in a faint smile, ready to savor her fall. His lips curl in a faint smile, ready to savor her fall. But Tasha does not falter. Her hands strike the keys with fiery brilliance, weaving the impossible run into sound so alive it seems to breathe. Every note bursts forth with precision and emotion, echoing not only power but pain. The hall vibrates under the force of her playing. What should have been chaos becomes clarity. Behind the storm of notes, memories flash. A dim Bronx apartment late at night, the weak glow of a lamp over a battered piano. A younger Tasha pushing herself beyond exhaustion, her fingers blistered and raw. She presses the keys again and again, refusing to stop even when her skin splits. She winces but continues, tears streaking her face. Rebecca Lang watches from the doorway, torn between pride and worry, whispering softly, "You are stronger than this pain. Do not let it stop you." The memory fades into another. Malik Thompson pacing the school music room, his voice stern but encouraging. "Do not chase perfection, Tasha. Demand it of yourself. Push further." She obeys, running the passage until her body shakes, every ounce of strength poured into mastering what others said she could not. Back in the hall, her fingers fly as if they were made for this moment. The once smug audience is frozen, their disbelief turning into awe. Some mouths hang open, some eyes glisten. A woman in the second row lifts a trembling hand to her lips, overcome by what she is hearing. Jason Mendez lowers his phone slowly, shame burning across his face. He had expected humiliation, something to laugh about later. Instead, he realizes he is watching greatness, something he himself could never achieve. He stares at her with a mix of regret and admiration, the phone now forgotten in his lap. Preston shifts uncomfortably, his smirk gone, his forehead damp with tension. He leans forward further, his body betraying the disbelief he cannot hide. His eyes dart from her face to her fingers, desperately searching for the slip that will never come. Jack Callahan, seated calmly among the board, shakes his head slightly, almost in wonder. He leans closer to his fellow judges, his voice low but clear. "Let her finish." The passage burns forward, her every strike like fire against the ivory. The room seems to hold its breath, each listener bound to the sound, unable to look away. The music has grown beyond performance. It has become confession, triumph, defiance, all in one. Another flashback collides with the sound. Daniel Ruiz in the quiet of the church basement, his tone cutting but steady. "Do not fear the hardest part. Fear holding yourself back. This is where you prove who you are." She remembers nodding, drenched in sweat, her body aching, yet pressing on because he would not accept less. That training, those endless nights, the pain, the sacrifice, all of it pours into this moment. The concerto rises higher, the storm at its peak, and then it comes, the final brutal climb of notes. Her body tenses, but she drives forward, every motion precise, every sound blazing. The hall is alive with sound, filling every corner, rattling through every soul present. Some audience members wipe their eyes, unable to contain what they feel. The climax crashes into the last chords, her hands slamming down with a force that shakes the instrument itself. The final sound echoes like a thunderclap, then lingers, hanging in the still air long after her hands fall away from the keys. For several seconds, there is no sound at all. No applause, no cough, no movement, only silence, thick and electric, as if the room itself cannot comprehend what has just been witnessed. Tasha sits still, breathing hard, sweat on her brow, her chest rising and falling with the force of what she is given. She does not look at them. She does not need to. The music has already spoken, and the silence that follows is the loudest answer she could have ever hoped for. For a long moment, the hall holds its breath. Tasha Brooks sits motionless at the piano, her chest rising and falling, the echoes of her final chord still suspended in the air like smoke that refuses to clear. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single pair of hands begins to clap. Another joins, and then the sound swells, applause crashing through the hall like thunder. The ovation is not polite. It is explosive. People rise from their seats, phones shaking as they capture the historic moment. The same mouths that had mocked her only minutes earlier now scream her name, their voices blending with the roar of hands meeting hands. Preston Wells does not clap. His face is pale, his jaw clenched. He leans toward the other judges and mutters, "Beginner's luck." Nothing more. But even as the words leave his lips, he knows the truth. This was not luck. This was mastery. And worse, hundreds of recordings are already spreading online, flooding social media in real time. Clips of his arrogant declaration, "If this girl touches the piano, I will resign on the spot," circulate alongside the footage of Tasha's flawless performance. The contrast is devastating. Tasha rises from the bench, her posture calm, her expression steady. She turns to face Preston directly. The room quiets, waiting. Her voice is clear, unwavering. "You made a promise. Do you remember?" Gasps ripple through the audience. Every eye turns to Preston. The wager has become more than a remark. It is a binding moment of truth. Jack Callahan, who has watched with measured restraint until now, leans forward. His voice cuts through the tension. "Director Wells, you made a public wager in this hall. You owe this academy honesty. You owe this student respect." Preston's face tightens. He attempts to wave it off, his tone dripping with forced amusement. It was a figure of speech. Surely we are not taking it seriously. But no one laughs with him. Not the board, not the students, not the crowd. The silence is heavier than ridicule. It is judgment. And then, like a tidal wave, the voices rise. Students shout from the audience, some replaying the video on their phones as proof. Parents demand accountability. Social media notifications ping across the hall as Preston's words spread beyond these walls. The internet is unforgiving, and already hashtags ignite. Resignation concerto. Tasha Brooks. Excellence speaks. The pressure closes in. Preston shifts in his seat, sweat glistening at his temples. He glances toward his fellow board members, hoping for rescue, but their expressions are cold, detached. They will not defend him. They cannot. Finally, Jack Callahan speaks again, this time with finality. The academy will not be built on broken promises. Director Wells, the honorable course is resignation. Preston's hand trembles as he adjusts his tie, his arrogance stripped away. The weight of the moment crushes him. There is no escape. At last his voice breaks. "Very well, I resign." A collective gasp fills the hall, followed by another eruption of applause, this time for justice. Students leap to their feet, cheering. Phones capture every second as Preston slumps in his chair, defeated, a titan undone by the very arrogance that once defined him. The board rises, and the lead examiner announces what everyone already knows. "Tasha Brooks, you have passed this audition with distinction." Tears shine in Rebecca Lang's eyes as she claps from the crowd, her voice trembling with joy. Malik Thompson smiles with quiet pride. Daniel Ruiz lowers his head, his face unreadable, but his eyes gleam with triumph. And outside these walls, headlines begin to spread faster than fire. Bronx teen forces academy director to resign. The resignation concerto. How one girl changed the stage. Preston's downfall is complete, sealed not by scandal but by music. And Tasha, standing in the glow of applause, knows that her fight was never just about an audition. It was about a truth larger than her. That excellence is the sharpest answer to prejudice, and talent cannot be silenced. Preston Wells's downfall arrives swiftly and mercilessly. The resignation spreads across headlines faster than he can defend himself. His arrogance, once a shield, becomes the very blade that cuts his career apart. Other academies close their doors to him, unwilling to associate with a man who wagered his reputation against a teenager and lost in front of the world. Invitations to lecture vanish. His name becomes a warning, not a credential. Even at home, the silence of his family speaks louder than words. Respect has slipped through his fingers, leaving only bitterness and regret. While Preston collapses, Tasha Brooks rises. Overnight, her name becomes a beacon of inspiration. Invitations pour in, first from Carnegie Hall, then from international stages across Europe and Asia. Her story captures the imagination of millions. A girl from the Bronx, armed with nothing but relentless determination, reshaping the meaning of excellence. Documentaries follow her journey, cameras capturing the contrast between her humble beginnings and the grandeur of global concert halls. The Manhattan Academy of Classical Music cannot ignore the change she has forced upon it. Policies are rewritten, Diversity initiatives are launched. Scholarships are created for students who once would have been turned away. Tasha's performance becomes a turning point etched into the Academy's history, a moment that redefines its legacy. Through it all, the people who believed in her stand quietly in the background, finally recognized. Malik Thompson, once just a supportive schoolteacher, receives commendations for nurturing talent others dismissed. Daniel Ruiz, her secret mentor in hidden practice rooms, is honored for shaping her into the musician who stunned the world. At her first grand concert at Carnegie Hall, the lights dim, the stage glows, and the audience waits in reverent silence. Rebecca Lang sits in the front row, her hands clasped tightly, eyes brimming with tears. She watches her granddaughter take the stage not as an outsider, not as a girl mocked by arrogance, but as a star who forced the world to listen. The first notes drift into the hall, rich and powerful, and the audience leans forward, captivated. In that moment, Rebecca whispers softly to herself, "When the world refuses to listen, let your music speak." And Tasha's music speaks, not just to the hall, not just to the city, but to the world. The stage lights glow brighter than ever, but Tasha Brooks stands calm at the piano, her fingers resting gently on the keys. The roar of applause from Carnegie Hall surrounds her, yet her mind drifts back to the moments that brought her here. She remembers the laughter that echoed in the Academy Hall, the way voices mocked her before she had played a single note. She recalls Preston Wells' sneer, the arrogance of a man who believed his words could define her worth. And above all, she remembers the quiet strength of her grandmother, Rebecca Lang. "When the world refuses to listen, let your music speak." Those words carried her through sleepless nights, through pain, through every wall the world tried to build. The spotlight holds her in its glow as the audience waits, breathless. She lifts her chin, her eyes scanning the vast sea of faces, some strangers, some admirers, some who once doubted her. The silence before the first note is almost holy. Her voice enters the silence, clear and steady, carrying not just to the hall but beyond. The best answer to prejudice is not anger. The best answer is excellence. The words linger and then the music begins once more, soaring into the stillness. Each note rings like truth spoken aloud, each chord a reminder of everything she has overcome. By the time the final sound fades, the entire hall is on its feet. A standing ovation crashes around her, endless, unstoppable. Her name rises in waves, Tasha Brooks, echoing across the hall, across the city, across the world. And in that sound, she knows she has won. Not just an audition, not just applause, but something greater. She has proven that talent has no boundaries, and that music, when spoken with honesty, will always be heard.